Hi, welcome back to Far From Eden. It's a bonus video. I feel pumped because YouTube wants to shadow ban. I can tell from the analytics, and especially the last couple. So they want to do that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to say it more. You don't want to hear it? I'm just going to say it more. People, censors. I'm going to expose this and explain it, because men need to know. Men need to know, like I said on the last video, a lot of them are out there still thinking they're going to find a unicorn. I know, I get it. Like, some men still want to go hunt for polar bears, and it's the most dangerous hunt. So you should at least know some of the dangers and how sort of deadly those unicorns can be, figuratively speaking. So we're going to dig in more to this book by this lovely author here from 1971. She was hated and maligned and banned and all kinds of things after she wrote this. Why? Why? Because some people don't want men to know what women are doing. They don't want them to know. Or they want men to think, oh, that's just a one-off. It's not. Manipulation through bluff. Man's strong, virile drive, hanky-panky drive, his brilliant mind, and his need for a system that will help him bear those responsibilities recognized by his intelligence have enabled women to make effective use of certain institutions that properly belong to the past. Institutions like the church, the many nonconformist sects, and other religious communities. She cold-bloodedly uses them to help with the manipulation of her children. Now, I have two instincts right now. I want to push back, obviously, because Ms. Bilar is secular. She is not a Christian. She does not see the value in it or see the truth in it, right? However, I also know that the Protestant church of today is absolutely infused with feminism. And it is, let's say, not welcoming to masculinity. It's very feminized. Some of it's very subtle, like the music and the feelings and the sermons and stuff, the feel good, whatever. And other things are just quite blatant with female pastors. So I'm going into this with both of those mindsets. She exploits their armies of clergymen and other functionaries as a kind of military police force designed to protect women's interests, even after her children are grown up. Yeah, the church absolutely tries to make the husbands giant simps for the wives, and shames men into, come on, do the right thing, get married. Even though we know a marriage contract with the government is very dangerous for men. Goodness gracious. Hence, it is advantageous to women, as we have already noted, to be neither religious nor superstitious. Unless a boy's manipulation has been exceptionally successful, as in the case of those who decide to become priests, men are equally unlikely to believe in the dogma of their church. But if its teachings are inculcated at a very early age, they do not help to provide certain archetypes and a useful basis for the standards of good and evil. These are standards which have no rational roots, but are part of men's subconscious and are therefore ineradicable. Essentially, these standards are always the standards of women. Okay, good and evil, right and wrong, in man's subconscious, it's written on their heart by our Creator. So, nice little scientific explanation for what is actually true. Any religious system must be based on manipulation, since it consists of a series of rules and taboos with a catalog of penalties for trespass against those rules. Funny, I learned in 2020 especially that's how science works. Mask on, mask off, 6 feet distance. Never mind, that doesn't mean anything. Get the miracle shot. You won't get sick. Oh, just kidding. Never mind. Trust the science. Come on now, Miss Vilar. No. These trespasses are called sins. The penalties for them are never imposed in reality. For faith in some kind of super consciousness is a system without real foundation. No one could know about secret sins or exact punishment for them. There's several of you that are in the chat every night, and I'm like, oh goodness gracious, you're going to have so much to say about this. Yin, Snowy Owls, Rojas. I'm sorry if I'm leaving anybody out, but those are the 3 that I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to have a lot to say about this. As a result, because it's usually feminists that hate the church because it's patriarchal. No one could know about secret sins or exact punishment for them. As a result, people are apt to say that an unavoidable misfortune, such as the loss of a friend or an earthquake, is a punishment. In earlier times, when men's understanding of such disasters as plagues, crop failures, and lightning was limited, men believed they were punishments for sins committed at some previous time. And you know what's happening right now? California is on fire. And there are a lot of people, even ones who are not so religious, that go, it kind of seems right because of all the degeneracy and everything that goes on there. I'm not saying that's what I believe. I'm not sure. But it's interesting that that is how our minds work. How could that possibly be with all this science in our brains? It's almost like we're made that way. But atheists don't want to talk about that. Funny, they can't even talk about it. Funny how angry it makes them. Why would it make them angry? Buddhists don't make me angry because I know it's hogwash. Hindus don't make me angry when they talk about karma and this and that because I'm like, it's not real. Why does it make you so mad? Okay. And so they ought to avoid them in the future by unconditional surrender to rules or by repentance, a kind of brainwashing. Okay. Such myths become obvious as man's mind develops. He can prove fallacy by committing a sin without incurring any subsequent signs of wrath. But the deep-seated fear of punishment, the feeling of having sinned, carefully cultivated during a child's earliest years, will prevent him as an adult from doing something that was considered bad when he was a child. And if by chance he does do something which as a child he called a sin, he will have at the very least a bad conscience. Tell me you don't understand Christianity without telling me you don't understand Christianity, because you're talking about karma. Like, I don't even, off base, but she's setting the stage so she can explain another tactic that women have to extract resources from men and use them as utility. One sin which figures in almost all of these catalogs is pleasure in she's stuck on this the last couple videos. These catalogs is pleasure in the bedroom fun act when reproduction is not intended. And since men, provoked by women, always take pleasure in bedroom fun, They yield to this pleasure as often as possible and never once give a thought to reproduction. During the Big O, man experiences a certain kind of pleasure far from the joy of having just engendered a child. Thus, in the moment, man is even more than ordinarily deluded. God gave men that urge. But talk to a father that holds his baby for the first time. Ms. Vilar, have you done that? I feel like she's insulting men a little bit here. I might be a little sensitive to it. I might be a little defensive. I'm very uncomfortable when men are insulted or degraded in any way or reduced. And perhaps that is what that act is like. But I've heard there's a clarity afterwards. They constantly transgress against the rules of their childhood beliefs and thus always carry with them a feeling of sin. Women, on the other hand, having learned to control their bedroom fun urge and to make love for the most part, not for their own satisfaction, but for some specific purpose, breadwinning, reproduction, gratification of a man, in the latter case, an act of charity. Commit no sins thereby, even if they consider bedroom fun sinful, they are immune to remorse. Yeah. When you compare it to how a man deals with when he is very convicted and when he's done wrong and how he beats himself up, you can see it when a marriage ends, when she files whatever. The two parties are both guilty. There's nobody who's perfectly innocent. The other one's totally guilty. But you see the man's reaction, and the man is super accountable. He's beating himself up. If only I were a better husband, etc. And you do not see that on the woman's side. You don't. She's a victim. Unlike men who are constantly forming new resolutions, which they never stick to, women do not have such a debit or guilt account in any system made for their use, even if they believed in such a system. With their tendency to self-abasement, their suppressed and stunted bedroom fun needs, their assumption that they will survive without working by letting others work for them, they resemble those figures, Jesus Christ, Gandhi, who allow themselves to be considered ideals by men, ideals which men, because of their slavery to their instincts, can never attain, and which confirm their suspicion that all qualities truly worthy of worship are in the last analysis feminine. Jesus is not feminine, but a modern perception of him is surely more of the judge not lest ye be judged, and not the flipping over of tables and the calling people out. He was masculine. But the picking and choosing in the feminization of the church makes it seem much softer, much more, as women would say, loving. But women's idea of love like that is just being nice. And being nice to somebody is not necessarily loving to them. Men know this, and this is also why we have the problem with single mother households, because they think loving their children is always being nice to them, but you need to be strict with them and tell them, no, that's not okay. That's loving, and that's who Jesus was. But I can understand why Ms. Vilar wouldn't know that at all. Yet, in reality, neither women nor their chosen police force, the clergy, are really interested in men's bedroom fun drive. The taboo did not have to apply to this particular instinct. They merely chose it because it is man's greatest and purest pleasure, and therefore his weakness and vulnerability when it comes to women. That's my little side note. Had he derived as much satisfaction from smoking or eating pork, woman would have equated smoking or eating pork with sin. Women didn't come up with the church and the sin and the rules, Ms. Vilar. The point is to keep him in a state of sin, fear, thus open to manipulation. This is one of the reasons why the catalog of sins varies according to a man's age. For a small child, the taboo is lying, coveting the property of others, and not honoring one's father and mother. For an adult, it is better and fun desire and lusting after one's neighbor's wife. She really doesn't have any idea. But then again, she's in Germany in 1971. I would imagine much more secular society. She is observing what she sees. And clearly already the church has been feminized. And that weakened it for this kind of scrutiny that isn't even talking about what it is. Yet how can they recognize these sins when they know neither the rules nor the system in whose name they were established? How can they believe in something that does not exist or feel ashamed of a pleasure that does not hurt anyone? Oh, it hurts people. What are you talking about? It doesn't hurt anybody. That was the problem with all this, liberation. It's not hurting anybody. We know, a lot of us know that now. A lot of people who are liberals, in that they felt like, well, it's just a freedom as long as you're not hurting anyone. And what a lot of us have learned now is that, it hurts society. It hurts families. It degrades everything. And so a lot of people who felt like, oh yeah, as long as you're not hurting anybody, were like, no, bring it back. We got to say no to this behavior because we don't want people having parades, in disgusting half-nude outfits in front of kids. We don't want that. We see that, that you were never saying that we just want to do what we want to do. I'm not going to hurt anybody. So now a lot of people are pushing back. People who aren't even religious. Agnostics have gone, we got a problem in society. We got to clean it up. Anything that deals with religious beliefs is contrary to the rules of reason and consequently has to be instilled at an age when a sense of logic is yet undeveloped. If possible, this should take place in a building whose absurd design and architecture equal the absurdity of that which is preached on it, thus making it all a little less incredible. I'm sorry. Those cathedrals, especially cathedrals in Europe, built by men, inspired by their creator, are not absurd, ma'am. They are not absurd. That is a reflection of a man's heart. And if it has to be for children, then what do you say to grown men who come to the faith later in life? She really has no concept of this. And the purveyors of this type of illogical thinking should, if possible, look different from other people. If children are taught by men who dress like women, for example, or who adopt some other form of masquerade, their pupils' bewilderment and awe will be all the greater, and their respect for these figures will never entirely leave them. Interesting. Women had taken great care to ensure that their lobby, the clergy, are always men. Not anymore. First, because the female image might be damaged if they represented their own interests. Men might think them calculating. And second, because they know men rate feminine intelligence rather low, which is why they can only influence a man's emotions. Advice from another man, and the one respected from childhood, is much more likely to be listened to and taken. Although this advice always benefits women, for example, they will advise a man to stay with a woman he doesn't love or support children he never wanted, it does not reflect hostility on the part of this lobby toward normal men, but is a direct consequence of that lobby's financial dependence on women. I think what she was seeing, I don't think she understood it, but I think what she was seeing was the infiltration of feminism in the church. I don't think she knows previous history of the church. I think she's seeing it through her 1971 lens, and it was already feminized. That's what I think she's seeing. And in that way, she's not wrong. It is definitely being used to shackle the men. Come on, man up. Don't you want to get married? Come on, a real man gets married, and you're like, hello, state contract is awful. And you're ostracized. There's so many men ostracized from the church. They don't feel welcome. They're always shamed. It's very, seeker friendly and soft. And the pastors don't challenge you, because that's not what women want. Women want to go there and feel good. And I think for most of you men, it's just you can sense the fakery. You can sense the manipulation. You've got a pastor on stage that acts like he's trying to sell you something. And you're seeing right through it. Like politicians. That's why so many people like Trump, because he was authentic. So they get these pastors on stage, and the men are just like, you're trying to sell me something. Why are you trying to look cool and act cool? Be real. And I suppose that started to be the case. She was seeing something. She was in tune with something that was happening. And maybe it happened first in Europe. It's possible. Women could survive easily without the church. They only need it for the training of men and children, or as a setting for the display of specialized wardrobes. But the church would be ruined without the support of women. Exactly. That's why they cater to them. Children can be trained, and today are very often raised without the church's help. It is entirely possible that women one day might give up the nave of a church as the most effective background for a white dress. Yeah, they don't. There's so many marriages that don't happen inside of a church. Have you guys noticed that? Weird. They might even consider a registrar sufficient to subdue a nervous bridegroom. Such trends would empty the churches in a couple of years. In the Soviet Union, marriage palaces have taken their place as a wedding background. If this became the fashion, people would see churches for what they really are: relics of a long dead age. They would withdraw their financial support, both public and private, which in the last analysis has always been provided by men. It is man who pays his own tormentors. So when we hear someone say what magical power the church has, since it still draws people to it after many hundreds of years, the circumstance has obviously been misunderstood. It is not the church which possesses a magical power. It is women. That is certainly true nowadays. The women are the ones that decide, which church you're going to go to, and that you're going to go to church. And that used to be the man used to head that up. It definitely changed. I did not realize it changed that long ago. Lola is a little impatient. If you're appreciating this video, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're heading towards 50,000. I can't even believe that. It's surreal. All such institutions have long since become more tools in the hands of women, and it is unlikely that they will ever do anything other than fulfill women's expectations. They cater to the women now. The churches cater to the women. It's a lot of times, if a divorce happens and that family, that couple was going to the church, the husband is the guilty party How dare you? How dare you get divorced? And how dare you cause her to have to file for divorce? And the woman's like, oh, let's wrap our arms around you, you holy and beloved creature. Ultimately, the victims are not the representatives of the various religious communities themselves. They want only to live a peaceful, undisturbed life, at the expense of masculine men, of course, just like women, and have become a kind of mafia used by women to terrify children, enslave men, and put a brake on progress. Yeah, let's break that progress. She's alive now. She's 89. I wonder what she thinks of the progress. Progress towards HE double hockey sticks. These men are forced under the threat of boycott to appear in ludicrously effeminate clothes, to intone grotesque songs loudly, and to tell horror stories to a sometimes even intelligent audience. All this despite the fact that these stories, by which they make such abject fools of themselves, have long been discarded by modern theology and stand. The term modern theology is just, that's an oxymoron. Like, there's no modern theology. There's heresy, and stand in obvious contrast to all they have been taught as students at their universities. Modern theology, of course, is useless for conditioning purposes now that it has renounced the carrot and stick principle. Women need those moth-eaten tales of heaven and hell, of devil and angels, of paradise and judgment day. Death is only a useful means of manipulation if it is a door leading either to eternal happiness or to eternal damnation. To which of these two realms this door may lead is dependent on a kind of point system. No, it isn't. Scored according to earthly achievement and calculated by women. No, it isn't. No, Ms. Vilar, no, that's not a thing. I mean, was it a thing in Europe? Because that's not how we do it. It may be how they want men to feel. Like, because I know in a lot of churches, you'll hear this. You'll hear this too. You'll hear women say, I'm a Christian. I believe the husband serves the wife as Jesus served the church. Yeah, but the church obeyed Christ. The church is supposed to obey Christ. So it doesn't mean that you're supposed to live happy wife, happy life and do everything she says whenever she says it. She says jump, you say how high. No, that is not the relationship between Jesus Christ and the church. Ms. Vilar doesn't get that. That's okay, because we're still getting insight into how the church got the way it got, that it was feminized, and that they don't welcome masculinity. That is true. They used to, until feminism said, we have to defeat the patriarchy, down with the patriarchy. Well, who's at the top of the patriarchy? God. So we know who and what they're trying to defeat. I don't know if all of them do, but that's okay. Every evil movement needs useful idiots. If life everlasting can be won only by faithfulness and slavery, it falls in with the interests of women, interests which would in no way be furthered if men decided to investigate eternal life in biological terms, an investigation for which we might have to wait a couple of generations. Oh yeah, they're trying it now. Make yourself an AI version and cryo, freeze yourself, and man has always wanted to defeat that because they want to be, and I mean mankind, because they want to be bigger than God or whatever. It's an ego thing. Women themselves are, of course, quite unmoved by all these myths. They go to church only if and when they want their consciences to not wait. They go to church only if and when they want their consciences. Sorry, it's a typo. to not bother them either way. For the big ceremonies, which are really attempts at intimidation on the part of women, not on that of clergymen, they array themselves in suitable attire, wedding dresses, christening clothes, mourning clothes, confirmation dresses, their men in the usual dark suits. They enact the roles of believer, superstitious person, or skeptic, but in reality, their minds are elsewhere. There are some pious women. There are some women who absolutely believe and are absolutely dedicated. I don't think you're going to find them in the big mega churches. You know, you tend to find them with a strong masculine man on their arm that says, this is how we're going to practice our faith. They are not interested in male speculations on the possibility of walking on water, turning water into wine by magic, disrespectful, or achieving also with the help of magic an immaculate conception. You know, it's funny that these atheists have to add that in. Why can't you just say it? Why are you so angry, Ms. Vilar? As usual, their interest does not concern itself with the essence of the thing as such, but with its possibilities of exploitation. If a man of another faith wants to marry a woman and demands her conversion in exchange for his own promise to work for her, no woman would hesitate for a moment. I know, that is crazy to me when women will just say, I'm going to convert to Judaism, or I'm going to convert to this. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? How can you do that? You don't, then you never believed. Then you never did. You can't just switch it up. If you do, then you never believe. There was never conviction, and it's absolutely false. And it's given up for what? For worldly what? Security, pleasure, all that kind of thing. That's not conviction, you know? And unfortunately, I think that happens a lot. I know of one, and they were older, and she converted to Judaism. And I think to myself, I don't know. Before, I think she was just sort of agnostic, not religious. But it sure was convenient. And if you're wondering, very, very wealthy man. And now she has everything her little heart ever desired. Big farm, big barn, lots of horses. And I'm like, well, that was convenient. So it does make you wonder, how can you not? I'm not calling her shallow. I'm just saying, because nobody can know what another person's heart is. But it's suspicious. It is suspicious. But there is no question that, especially in this day and age, a lot of the church is to keep a man in check. So he will do her bidding. So he will simp for her. And it's just disgusting. And that's why so many of the men that will follow this channel don't go to church. And unfortunately, it's also why men who were never raised in it, were taught that it was magic or sky daddy or whatever, they see it now and they go, ugh, right? Look, a lot of us have thought that in the West, when authoritarianism comes, that they will just take away our ability to go to church. I don't think that's the case, because then we would all know, and then we would be resistant, and that would be a problem for the overlords. But what if they infiltrated the church and they made it not the church? What if they twisted things so now they're teaching false doctrines? What if they made it more, well, all paths lead to heaven, and less John 3:16? What if they started saying, well, that was back in that time. Now, they're referring to men and women. The Bible was written by men because in that time, men were so privileged, blah, blah, blah. And that's happening. That's happening in this day and age. I'm like, no, it was written by people for a reason. He chose men. and not women to do that. It wasn't just the times. And also, the other thing that you won't hear Ms. Vilar say is, guess what? Those followers of Jesus, they died because they wouldn't backtrack on what they knew. They wouldn't say, bless you, they wouldn't say, no, he didn't rise from the dead. And you know what? Men don't die for a lie. They died for truth. Horrible, horrendous ends. She's not going to talk about that. But that's okay. This channel, we recognize that truth. And I'm never going to backtrack on that. I have found that we share that, and it is absolutely relevant, because it is a way that you guys are manipulated today. And I think that's part of the plan going forward. I don't think that women are in control of this plan. I think the women are useful. I think the overlords want to destroy men because men are in their way. So they need to disenfranchise them. They need to, kind of push them out of society a little bit. Not have them be the heads of families. Not have them be in charge of churches. And women are the easiest way to knock the men off of their rightful place. So with that, I'm going to remind you, with all of this going on around you, with all of these arrows aimed at you, please protect your peace. Take the time to feed your soul. I love you guys. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.